Welcome to Rewired. Today we're going to be understanding why AI chatbots just can't seem to tell the truth. So in order to answer the question of why AI chatbots can't just tell the truth, we first need to ask ourselves why we ever assumed that they would. And to understand that, it's helpful to see how computers got to become so reliable as they are today. If we rewind the clock maybe 80, 90 years to where computing was just getting off the ground, computers were actually mechanical machines. And so they would typically only be able to do one thing. So you would have maybe a machine that had an area where you could turn some wheels and that would represent the number 1. And then another area where you could turn some wheels and that would represent the number 2. And this machine would be able to add those numbers together. So you'd pull some big lever and then some internal components would move and you'd end up with a 3 on another wheel. So for a system like this, it's not that unexpected that something could break eventually. So, one of the components wasn't quite aligned correctly, or something went wrong with one of the connections. And so eventually you get an incorrect output, 1 + 2 = 4, for example. And that's not super unexpected for a mechanical machine with moving parts. But over the years, there were many, many improvements to those. And so quite quickly, those machines moved over to be electrical. And then eventually, more and more improvements came to those electrical components, to the point where now the computer that's probably in your hand can do billions of calculations every second and get them all correct. And so many computer programs were built on top of that. Like, for example, a website coming from the other side of the world onto the device in your hand. When you click a button, it takes you to the next page. That is something that relies on that process underneath being super reliable, and we've come to rely on that. But AI was actually never built to do exactly what you tell it to. The way an AI program is typically built is that the programmer will tell the AI how to learn, and then the AI will go and learn that thing, and the thing that it learns is the product, not the process of learning, which is what the programmer actually wrote. And so in order to get there, it needs to try different ways of answering questions. As for example, in a chatbot, it needs to sometimes answer with more text, sometimes answer with less, sometimes add emojis, sometimes not. And by doing that, it will eventually get to something that is useful. So if we look at the example of a website, if you click on a button and every day that takes you to a particular page, but then you click on the same button the next day and it crashes, that's unexpected because it's supposed to do the same thing every single time. But with an AI system, it's kind of expected that it gives you different answers every time because it is built on an element of randomness. It does try different things every time you ask it the question. And by giving it that ability, it allows it to answer to our much more complex demands. So an AI chatbot, we're really demanding a lot from it compared to, say, a calculator app. We sometimes want it to be creative or expressive, and sometimes clear and concise. And those things are quite easy when the answer is just 1 + 2 = 3. You can say that in one sentence if you need to. But if there's now suddenly you're asking it about the news, then there may be multiple perspectives or opinions on a particular topic. And so answering in 2 sentences doesn't really cut it anymore. It has to choose between being concise and being truthful. And so the reality is that sometimes being concise wins. And so the problem was never really with AI itself, it's with our attitudes towards it. AI was not built to give you the same answer every time. It was built to make you come back the next day and ask more questions. It was built to do that by giving good enough answers that are not always 100% truthful and not always 100% unbiased. We need to change our attitudes and expectations of it, because otherwise we'll fall for every single deepfake and end up believing everything it says, and that road does not end well.